things to do. They would not necessarily go to Tahrir Square every Friday and would be would be engaged in making money as opposed to demonstrating. Underlying factor of why the Arab Spring was instigated were economic. Job creation, lack of jobs, underemployment, unemployment. 40% of the Egyptian economy is underground because of lack of trust in the in government transparency. 40% of Egyptians live under $2 a day. Youth unemployment there is in excess of 50%. Youth unemployment in the Arab world in general is between 50 and 60%. Unemployment in Yemen is probably closer to 70%.
Where?
Yemen. Unemployment is a massive challenge, and if those guys were employed, or at least had some sort of a decent chance of making a living, a good living, making money, they would rather make money and go to Tahrir Square every Friday in Cairo and demonstrate against anything, whether it's a Mubarak government or a post-Mubarak government, whether it's a liberal or a Muslim Brotherhood. They will not be happy with a Muslim Brotherhood or a liberal or Mubarak or whatever regime you bring there, as long as they do not have a decent standard of living. And that is the main instigator, main catalyst of the Arab Spring.
In Egypt?
And everywhere. Wherever it
Tunisia?
happened. Well, Tunisia was a direct cause of someone who was unable to sell his fresh produce at a market stall. He was not given the license. He had to earn money. He burnt himself. It was filmed on YouTube. It wasn't a social media revolution. YouTube was the means by which his story was conveyed to the rest of the world. But the underlying cause was lack of opportunities to create employment, and to create wealth, to make money, not create wealth, to earn your living. Forgetting about prosperity. And that is a common denominator of the countries that have undergone the unrest to whatever degree it happened.
It's an economic unrest.
Absolutely. Well, without it, it would not be the case.
And how about in Syria?
Syria is a special case because there's. Interestingly, you say that because Damascus, Aleppo, and other centers, economic centers, financial centers of Syria, were the last to undergo the unrest that places like Idlib or Halab or excuse me. Let's start this again. Damascus, Aleppo, financial centers did not participate in the Syrian Spring until the economic factors manifested themselves into the largely entrepreneurial, commercial heart of the Syrian economy that are concentrated in Damascus and Aleppo. It was in the poorer parts of Syria that the revolution started. In Daraa, in the border between at the Jordanian-Syrian border, where there is high unemployment, where there is a very low standard of living, in Homs, in Hamad, those places are the ones where the revolution in Syria started. In Damascus and Aleppo, they only started when the sanctions were enforced by the Europeans and Americans and other Arab states, that people started thinking, right, now it's biting in because it's affecting our standard of living. That you are seeing green shoots of sort of very slowly evolving revolution in those key financial centers. But we still are not seeing it on a big enough scale to say that the people in those areas where the people are reasonably prosperous have revolted. They haven't.
Such as?
Damascus and Aleppo in Syria. They're still relatively quiet. We've got explosions, very likely to be terrorist explosions by Al-Qaeda. I mean, who knows? That's what the Syrian regime says. And I would, without being a close follower of Syria in particular, but I would be more inclined to say that those explosions in Syria and Aleppo are Al-Qaeda terrorists. And that's where you've got this overlap of and that's where the danger is, because you've got an overlap of what people like Al-Qaeda want, which is to overthrow the Syrian regime, and what those people are looking for, which is to create a better, better economic conditions for themselves.
Is there a simple solution? I mean, even now, for instance, they had a revolution in Egypt. Will this new parliament make things economically better? I mean, aren't the economics of the place so limited? They're not farming enough. They don't have a high enough GDP to buy things.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt has had a very strong social infrastructure that's been operating for decades. And that has, at least to the Egyptians, the Egyptian average man in the street, has been seen as a relatively, and I underline that word, neutral provider of services that the successive governments have failed to provide. So at least there is, out of the contenders to take over the governance of Egypt, so far the Muslim Brotherhood seem to be the ones with the most the agenda that is most attuned to the Western model. And that is the difficulty here that is being created, in that you've got a political system that is at least outwardly at odds with the with Western thinking, socially, politically, and so on, but economically it fits in better with Western capitalism than, for instance, the pro-Western Mubarak regime did.
Well, how will they bring industry to Egypt? How will they bring economic development there?
Who? The
Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, they're reaching out. I don't think they should be shunned immediately. I think there at least should be attempts to bring them in and win them over. I mean, after all, you've got more than half of the Egyptians supporting them. You've got 40 million people there. And that is why this period is a critical one, in that you've got to ensure that you don't want Egypt to turn into another Iran, as far as the West is concerned, or as far as this is 1979, 1980.
Wouldn't that happen under a Muslim Brotherhood dominated parliament?
If they find that this is the only, I mean, I can't speak for them, and I don't know what their thinking is, but at least I would have a go at trying to convince them not to move in that direction. I mean, there's no harm doing so. It's not an arduous situation, but you've got them. You've got them, and you've got to deal with them. You could shun them. Maybe if you ask me in 6 months or in a year's time, I would say yes, go. They're hopeless. Don't talk to them. But I would be more comfortable saying that after you've said this. We've tried talking to them for 6 months, 1 year, nothing happened. They're hopeless. Then I would feel at least more comfortable, and then you could go to the Egyptian people. We've done that. They failed. Deal with them. Now I think it's a little bit too early to prejudge them. Excuse me. Yeah. So that's the it's a challenging situation. It's a challenging situation.